Eyewitness News presents Newsmakers with your hosts Jane Ann Bugda and Andy Mahalchik.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda along with Andy Mahalchik. It is no secret that opioid and heroin abuse is on the rise. Heroin hits home is Lackawanna County's approach to the growing problem. Today we're going to take a closer look at the initiative that's raising awareness in hopes of saving lives. When we come back, I'll introduce you to our guests, and our conversation will begin when this edition of Newsmakers returns right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda along with Andy Mahalchik. Heroin, opioid abuse, hear about it in just about every community throughout northeastern and central Pennsylvania. Today we're going to take a look at the problem and an initiative called Heroin Hits Home from Lackawanna County. And we are joined by Lackawanna County District Attorney Shane Scanlon and Lackawanna County Coroner Timothy Rowland. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're both very, very busy, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy lives to talk to us about the Heroin Hits Home initiative and about the problem that's growing not only in Lackawanna County but throughout all of northeastern and central Pennsylvania. You know, we talk about there's a spike in the number of deaths with opioids and heroin. When did we first start noticing that?
In 2003, we had 37 drug deaths. Fast forward to 2014, it went to 41 drug deaths. Go to 2015, it went to 82. It was that year in between there, and we're looking at this year will be just around 100 by the end of the year.
And you know, you've been coroner, you've been a district attorney. Did this surprise you? Seeing this, you know, being?
Well, I think nobody saw this coming. I mean, I think it's just it's a combination of things that fell into place, and that's why we're at. You know, in I think it was 1997, the CDC actually came out with a report on for the medical community on managing pain. Number one, being able to identify the pain and the severity of the pain, and number two, to treat it. And this, in my mind, kind of opened the floodgates for all these pharmaceutical companies to develop these opioid drugs in a variety of strengths and delivery systems, and from there it's skyrocketed.
And if I can ask, I think, and we've covered these stories, it almost gets to a point where, and it's so sad in our newsroom when we hear about these overdoses, but what's the connection between opioids and then there's heroin? Because I think people have the impression of a heroin addict, somebody on the street dealing drugs, running down a dark alley getting heroin. But then they hear opioid, prescription medicine. What's the linkage between those two?
Right. I think, you know, whenever I'm given the opportunity to speak to students or speak to a group, I say to them, if I asked you to close your eyes and tell me what a heroin user looks like, I want to know how many of you would picture a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, you know, really anyone, because that's what we're seeing. I know we talked about it earlier, but 3 out of 4 of our heroin users start with prescription pain medications, opioids. They're prescribed often. Most of our people start with these as legitimate injuries. They need these prescriptions, and unfortunately it spirals out of control quickly. But as far as what does a heroin user look like, or what would an addict look like, there is no stereotype. That's what's so scary. You can't pinpoint what class of people that's going to really affect, because it could be any of us.
It doesn't discriminate.
It does not.
So you see people that are teenagers, and then you probably see people in their 60s and 70s that are hooked on drugs. And you know, you mentioned the opioids, and in your PSAs, which are very powerful, and on your website, you all say that, you know, it begins with a pill, but often ends with a needle. Is that, you know, the gateway to heroin most times?
I believe so.
I mean, I think there are not many people that wake up in the morning and say, I think today's a great day to start with illicit drugs, so I'm going to stick a needle in my arm. We don't have people that start their abuse that way.
You know, and you know, you're here today to talk about a unique initiative called Heroin Hits Home. You know, we'll be showing you some of the PSAs coming up. We'll have the website up, and we'll have all the information, you know, on today's show on pahomepage.com. But tell us a little bit how Heroin Hits Home, the initiative, started.
Actually, you know, I was in the DA's office. I was the prosecutor in the drug unit, so Tim and I would work together quite often. And I truly believe that it was in the time between 13, 14, 15 that we saw such a rise in fatal numbers. I honestly thought in 2015, when our numbers just about doubled, that we were going to be national news. I didn't think that that was humanly possible. To hit that high a number of people dying of all walks of life, that it could just be another statistic. And shockingly, that's what it ended up being. So one of the first things I did when I was appointed district attorney was go after that issue, and that was through Heroin Hits Home.
I think we start, you know, forever, you know, we always had people that were dying of heroin deaths. But I think now the difference is now we're seeing definitely younger, you know, that age span is definitely, we have younger kids that are getting on the drug now, where we used to only see, you know, an older population. And that's for, you know, a variety of reasons. Kids for, you know, athletic injuries and whatever, they get on the opioids and they take those, and then once you have that relief and the feeling of taking those, you don't want to stop. So what typically happens is once those scripts stop being filled, then we're seeing them migrate to illicit. And obviously on the street, opioids are very expensive, where heroin is not.
Are we seeing where people, obviously, the drug dealers out there now are getting their hands on opioids, and they know that they can go on the street or through their network and make a lot of money for the addicts who have to have, if they can't get heroin, they can get opioids?
I think, honestly, the whole issue is supply and demand. We have an area that's very high in demand. There are people that are willing to push the poison. There's our supply. You know, you can very quickly make an awful lot of money, and that's a huge problem for our area. We're at the epicenter. You know, we're about 2 hours away from major source cities, whether it be from the New York area, the Philadelphia area, portions of New Jersey. We have Interstate 81, 80, 380, 84, the Turnpike. We're a hop, skip, and a jump away from these cities.
And Shane, what are you seeing, if you know, the cost of getting heroin here or opioids on the street as compared to New York, Philadelphia?
Well, let me tell you, I started in the drug unit in 2007. When we were doing investigations, we would pay $25 for a bag of heroin. We're now paying as little as $2, our average price being about $10. So imagine what they're buying it for in the bigger cities if they're able to sell it here for that low of a price.
And people don't imagine that the addiction is immediate with heroin, and it's a growing need. So as you say, the supply and the demand. So once you start, then that demand is always there.
We've seen people that use upwards of 50 bags of heroin a day.
Wow.
Then fast forward to 2017 or even 16, where now we have heroin addicts who think they're purchasing heroin from their dealers. I mean, you know, God forbid we trust our drug dealers, but instead of buying heroin, they're buying heroin with fentanyl, or in some cases, it's just fentanyl, which is 20 times more powerful than heroin, and it literally drops you in your tracks. And that's what we're seeing now.
Now, that was described as a drug that is like an elephant tranquilizer?
Well, I think there are articles recently on, you know, you have fentanyl, you have methylfentanyl, and now we're reading cases in the western part of the state where people are dying from carfentanyl, which is, fentanyl's 20 times, carfentanyl is 100 times more powerful, to the point where they're advising first responders and even the crime scene investigators, the police officers, the coroner staff, all those people that, you know, you've got to be very careful in handling that, because you could be overcome by that. It's that powerful, and that's what we're seeing.
You know, we talk about this, and I had asked you this question before. You know, we're sitting here with a coroner, we're sitting here with a district attorney, and, you know, we're trying to convey this message to people, and yet it doesn't seem that people are afraid. afraid when we hear that something like this can stop you in your tracks. It could kill you. Why aren't people getting the message? What do you think the problem is?
I think one of the problems, unfortunately, with a heroin addiction or an opioid addiction is that our users are always chasing the higher high or that initial high, and it always takes more to get there. And they go after these stronger drugs. A while back, when we would have a rash of deaths, we would publish the stamp on the bag, stay away from bag stamped this because someone died from it. We found out that our users were seeking out those bags because they thought, you know what, I'm a more experienced user, I can handle that. It's probably a great high.
But especially young adults and young kids, high school kids, just out of high school, college kids, they're fearless. I mean, I've been to scenes where somebody had died from what we suspect is a drug death. You find paraphernalia, you find empty packets, and there's other people there where I would say to them, hey, are you a drug user too? And they'd say, yeah. And I'd say, like, this will be you someday. And it's the truth. But kids especially, think they're infallible.
Agreed.
And you mentioned children, and part of your program is going to schools and talking to youngsters.
Yeah.
And this is going to surprise me, but at what age should we begin talking to our children about drug
Middle
abuse?
school.
Agreed. Middle school.
Middle
and
school.
I think that the topic of your conversation and the content of your conversation has to be the truth. Our kids are able to gain all of this information, whether it's through the little computers that we all carry around, our cell phones, the internet at school, internet at home. They know the truth. They probably know friends that are experimenting, trying some of these drugs. We have to be honest with them, and we have to face the fact that this is probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Like parents, I tell parents, like, look, you get one shot to keep your children off of this stuff, because God forbid they take it and they become addicted. It is impossible to get them off it. And I'm talking like rehabs, multiple rehabs. I mean, I think, when they hit rock bottom, and I think their heart is saying, I got to get off this drug, but their brain is saying, I got to take the drug, and it's impossible to get off it. Parents get one shot. So parents, like, you have to, guard your children. You have to watch when they come in the house at night, no matter what time it is. They need to confront them, and they need to talk to them and make sure they're okay. They need to watch their spending habits. They need to watch who their friends are.
Grades.
Grades, anything that changes it. They need to watch their kids for if they are addicted to the drug. At the end of the effectiveness of the drug, they become agitated. They want the car to go somewhere. The parents get really. This is up to the parents, really, to make sure that those kids don't get on these drugs.
Another plea that I make when speaking to students is our kids' friends spend more time with our kids than probably anyone else. Your fellow students spend hours and hours a day with your children, and then they spend time with them afterwards. It's their responsibility to worry about their friends as well. I'm not encouraging everyone to be a tattletale, but we're not talking about innocent things anymore. We're not talking about something that maybe will hurt your future. We're talking about the potential of death, and it's very serious. I mean, we saw it approximately 100 times last year. It's real, and they need to understand that.
And both of you have seen some horrible things without a doubt. When you go to the scenes where the body is found, or whatever age, especially the younger folks, do you see the same horror movie playing out? Are the families aware of it?
The playbook is the same. It's the parents. I wish we could have done more. Like, this is what I'm saying. You get, literally one shot to do this. The friends are devastated. The person that died, he was such a great kid. We can't believe that he did this, but yet he's been in a rehab. People know that he's taking it, and then they also know the other kids are taking it too. But they just, for the short time where we're mourning the death, they remember it. But then once it moves on, the kids are back taking their drugs again.
And you would think that would be a wake-up call.
Oh my goodness!
Especially
When you find
younger.
somebody laying on the floor, or laying in their bed, or sitting on a toilet with literally a syringe in their arm. Like, I mean, it's as real as it gets. I mean,
There was one situation, and we have a million stories to tell for sure. You guys could tell. There was a case out in central Pennsylvania, out by Penn State, where a bus person went on a bus that travels across the state. I won't say what company. And the folks got off the bus driver's going through the vehicle and finds a young guy in the restroom dead with a needle in his arm from heroin. And it
you
just
find them at your
everywhere.
local restaurant, McDonald's. You know, not picking on any particular, but you know, where they go in the booth in the bathroom, and then you know, they don't come out, and somebody goes in and looks for them. You know, it's their bedroom, it's their basement, it's restaurants, it's hotel rooms. You know, where people are. You know, they don't hotel rooms. They find them when they go to check the room, to rehab the room. You know. And,
Now, on your website, there's a tip line on there. Tell us a little bit about that. What is the tip line about?
The tip line is multifaceted. Number one, it's a resource if people need some help. They can call, they get in touch with our office. We will reach out, we'll help them, we'll help them, we'll speak with them. If they see suspicious activity, whether it's frequent traffic in and out of a house in their neighborhood, they can call that number, we'll get the information to our detectives. If it's concerns about their child, or you know, they're worried about, like Timmy said, spending habits, personality change, sudden anger, rage, sleepiness, you know, it's all a place for people to turn. We don't have all the answers, but we can at least direct you where we think we can best serve you.
And also on the website, it's numbers on there for people who are seeking help. You know, for someone that may be looking for help, or for a family member looking for help. There's all the resources that are on there as well.
What we tried to do is make Heroin Hits Home a one-stop shop. From the comfort of your home, you can look up any of the information that we can service in our area. A lot of times there's a huge stigma attached with addiction. People don't want to walk into Tim's office, my office, and say, I have a problem, I think my son or daughter has a problem, can you help us? They can go on the website, they can find all of this information and be guided accordingly.
Okay, well, we are going to take a quick break, and we want to remind everyone that information on today's show can be found on pahomepage.com or under the Newsmakers link. You're watching Newsmakers. We are a proud recipient of 2 Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasting Awards for excellence in public affairs programming. We'll be right back.
She started out with painkillers. Then she got carried away.
Last year in Lackawanna County, drug overdoses cost 69 people their lives. That's nearly twice as many deaths as the previous year. The problem won't go away on its own. We need to end this horror, now. Visit heroinhitshome.com to join our fight.
She started out with painkillers.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. Jane Ann Bugd along with Andy Mahalchik. We're joined today by Lackawanna County District Attorney Shane Scanlon, Lackawanna County Coroner Timothy Rowland. That's a very powerful public service announcement. When I first saw it, I got chills. And how someone watching that cannot get a message that drugs kill is beyond me. But there are other PSAs, public service announcements on that website, and you bring this message of Heroin Hits Home to schools, to service groups, to get the message out. Do you a lot of hits on that website every day?
We do. It's actually visited quite often. Social media helps drive it. We're very active on social media, trying to draw attention to it. One of the things that we do when we speak at schools is we'll ask the kids to go home, talk to their parents about the presentation they heard, so it'll start the dialogue, and also like the page on Facebook. You know, you may go on and talk about a star's clothing, or you may talk about, you know, your favorite athlete and how well he played in last night's game. But if your friend sees the Heroin Hits Home logo pop up on your website, it starts a dialogue. A friend may ask, what's that about? Why is it there? And that's what we want people to do, is talk about the crisis that we find ourselves in.
Now, we were talking before about how you were saying why it didn't make national news. The tragic part now is our area is making national news. I think we have some video from, I did a story not long ago on NBC News, was in Luzerne County, talking about how they looked at stats and realized Luzerne County and little old northeastern Pennsylvania led the way, one of the highest among the nation in heroin and overdose opioid deaths. And it's just shocking when you think about major metro areas, but Luzerne County, per capita and percentage-wise, leads the way.
Heroin hits home. It's where we are. It's where we find ourselves. We need to do something about it.
Now, an interesting aspect about is that you are now arming your fire departments, your police departments with Narcan. And tell us a little bit about why this is important.
Well, I saw on a piece this morning on a fire department that was getting Narcan, and they mentioned in the story that the police department in the same city, Scranton, administered Narcan to and it made a difference in over 30 administrations just last year, which I think is huge. You know, ambulances, especially the paramedic units, have been using Narcan since the mid-70s. And, you know, for a while they weren't giving enough Narcan. They've upped the dosage for it, and now it works. The problem that we see is, though, that the deaths that I'm seeing have occurred like hours before somebody finds them. You know, and I think typically if people are with them, you know, they're not calling 911. They're picking up whatever's there and leaving. I mean, it's, you know, very sad. But you know, if somebody takes the drug and they go unconscious and they have trouble breathing, Narcan absolutely works. And it's really not it doesn't require a huge amount of training to administer it.
Now you have...
I brought, just a pack that I got picked up today for one of our coroner vehicles to carry for the car fentanyl.
Let me hold it up so we could...
And it literally is a syringe with a disbursement device on the end of it, and you just load the syringe and you shoot it in the victim's nose, and it's absorbed immediately through the nasal membrane, and it works immediately, provided they have a pulse or CPR.
And we're also seeing this in schools as well. Some schools...
There's really not a reason anywhere that somebody could overdose. You know, like we just got finished talking about people in bathroom stalls or the person on the bus. I mean, it happens everywhere. You know, if I had somebody that I knew that was addicted, I would make sure I had that. In fact, we've had deaths where the family has had Narcan, but the family wasn't present when the person passed.
How horrible is that?
That's
just having a first aid kit with mercurochrome and Band-Aids. You have to have Narcan in your house because and it's horrible to get to that point. But going back to the source of the problem, you know, prescription. I know Pennsylvania just passed a law last year trying to get a better control on prescriptions.
The prescription drug monitoring program, which I spoke to earlier in the week, knowing that I was coming here. I spoke to a pharmacist. I spoke to a couple family practice doctors that are, and it works very well. They're logging in the prescriptions, and then the pharmacy, when they fill them, they look in, and if there was a prescription that was filled, you know, within the time frame, like, you know, 30 tablets should last X amount of days, they're not filling it. So I think what we're going to see is, on the front end of that, we're going to see less prescriptions being given to people, which relates to less available medication on the street and less people, you know, that will be able to take the product a long time. But the downside of that will be, as my fear is, and I'm sure Shane has the same fear, is that now we'll see a spike in people going to heroin.
Also part of the program, Lock 'em Up Day, which is an interesting, lock up your prescription drugs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. What we see quite often is our kids are getting their first use out of their own medicine cabinets or out of a friend's medicine cabinet. What we're encouraging people to do is lock up their prescription drugs. Your children know where they are, whether they're hidden in a kitchen cabinet, in a hall closet, in mom's underwear drawer. Your children know where that medication is. Believe it or not, they know. Buy a small lockbox, small safe, so that you know if it's tampered with or if someone's trying to get in there. We don't want our kids getting their hands on these drugs.
And it's also important to safely dispose of these drugs as well.
Correct.
And there are
We have 4 lockboxes throughout our county right now where you can come in anonymously, drop off your old or unwanted prescription drugs. we'll dispose of them properly in conjunction with the Pennsylvania National Guard and the Pennsylvania Office of Attorney General.
And we see local police outside of that doing, in my local pharmacy at home, I saw the police department in the pharmacy taking back.
Let me ask you, you gentlemen, to use a crystal ball, where are we headed from here? I mean, I see Governor Wolf of the PSA out there. It's national news all the time, and you know, it's a nationwide problem, and unfortunately, again, looks like Northeastern PA is ground zero. Where are we heading to the future? I mean, is it a scary future? Or could be?
Following what Tim said, I think right now with the new prescription drug monitoring, we're going to see more people progress to street drugs initially. I'm hoping that we're able to combat that quickly to get a hold on this. I think monitoring the prescription drugs will reduce our people getting addicted initially, but I think we're going to see it get a little bit worse before it gets better.
And we have about a minute left. I want to remind everyone that information on today's show can be found on pahomepage.com or the Newsmakers link. Also, if someone's interested in having the Heroin Hits Home initiative come to their school in Lackawanna County, or if someone's from outside of the county maybe is interested in learning about what you're doing here, they can give you a call as well?
Sure, they can call our office. We'd be happy to help them.
Absolutely.
We'll have that information again on pahomepage.com. We want to thank you both for joining us today. This was one of the fastest half hours of TV today. So thank you again, Shane Scanlon, Tim Mullen, for joining us.
Thanks for your hard fight out there, too.
Thank you for
and
having
keep up
us.
the good work. For Andy Michalczyk and everyone behind the scenes, I'm Jane Ann Bugda. We want to thank you so much for making Newsmakers part of your day. Check us out on pahomepage.com, and we'll talk again next time.